I think your team is implementing AI or experimenting with AI more than any other team that I've literally spoken to. What would you say has been the hardest cultural shift to manage?
I feel like I'm constantly behind. It constantly feels like my peers are ahead of me. We're constantly kind of chasing the new technology and trying to keep up. One example that I give, our head of stock admin was like, I don't see how AI can help me. I know there's these tools, but I don't know what they could help me do in my day job. And I said, well, you present frequently to the entire DocuSign population of employees on our stock programs. What if you used AI to help generate images or change the slides or improve the way that you deliver that content? And she was like, oh, I had never thought of that. And I was like, great, well, let's show you how to go into Gemini, create an image, and get that added to your presentation.
Wow. I love your enthusiasm when you talk about it. Your face lights up. In this episode, I'm interviewing Sandy MacDonald, Senior Director and Head of Legal Operations at DocuSign. We talk about how the legal team at DocuSign have created an AI-first culture unlike any I have ever seen before. So, Sandy, when we last spoke, you mentioned that your team are using AI quite a bit, and actually I think your team is implementing AI or experimenting with AI more than any other team that I've literally spoken to. So it sounds incredible, honestly. When you're implementing AI across your team, what would you say has been the hardest kind of cultural shift to manage?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad to hear we're ahead of the curve because, it's in my role, I feel like I'm constantly behind, right? It constantly feels like my peers are ahead of me. I've adopted something really exciting. I've built, the latest and greatest. So we're constantly kind of chasing the new technology and trying to keep up. When I think about a cultural change, it's, fundamentally people don't like change, right? So they're thinking about like, I know how to do my job. I've been doing it this way for so many years. I know what tools, I have at my disposal. I don't want to do anything differently because a lot of it is fear, really. I think a lot of it comes down to a fear of if I start to use AI, is that going to then replace me? And what I always tell people is like, absolutely not. The people that will be replaced are the people that aren't using AI, right? The people who are unwilling to adopt. So for me, it's really been finding really narrow use cases, like understanding what individual people's pain points are, like not even necessarily like a function, like really going to an individual person kind of level and helping them see, okay, how can AI help me in my job, in my day-to-day work? One example that I give that is, it's a really simple example, but our head of stock admin was like, I don't see how AI can help me. I know there's these tools, but I don't know what they could help me do in my day job. And I said, well, you present frequently to the entire DocuSign population of employees on our stock programs. You update them on, our ESPP programs and taxes and all that. It's like, what if you used AI to help generate images or change the slides or improve the way that you deliver that content? And she was like, oh, I had never thought of that. And I was like, great, well, let's show you how to go into Gemini, create an image, and get that added to your presentation. And so it's, and that's not like totally transforming the way she works, but it got her started using AI. And with that one simple use case, then she's like, oh yeah, and maybe, that AI experience that you were talking about to answer stock admin questions more easily, like, yeah, I'd be open to that now, right? So it's really like getting the foot in the door. So I'm finding that like the cultural change is like, helping people understand that their job is not immediately disappearing because AI is now here. Their job will disappear if they don't use AI. And then finding those, like, what is in it for each individual person has really helped change. And then, of course, just like fostering a culture of innovation and wanting to try things and knowing that it's okay to fail. Like a lot of times we try something and we're like, yeah, that didn't really work how I wanted it to, or that's not the right tool for this job. It's okay. We like try something and fail quickly and then move on. But that's been a big sort of cultural shift is getting people to want to experiment and try something new and try something different. Later this year, I'm going to do a team hackathon, a legal team hackathon. And that's one of the ways that I'm trying to instill more of this culture of like innovation and experimentation and like trying things and just seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Wow. I love your enthusiasm when you talk about it. Your face lights up.
Well, that's part of it, right? Is like I come in like, oh, I've got this really cool, fun thing for you to try, right? And so approaching it also is just this like, this is going to be fun. We're going to do this together. Like, I'm here to help you. Like, let's build this and let's make it fun, right? Like sometimes the AI generated images we make are just silly. Like we have a running joke in our department with lawyer chickens, like little chickens that are lawyers, and we make AI images and yeah, okay, that's not transforming the way we work, but it's brought some fun to it and this, that culture of experimentation and people are like, oh, I'm going to go try creating an image and like seeing what happens. And they learn how to prompt better. And a big way that I approach this from a cultural perspective is like, make it fun, right? We spend a lot of time at work, like we might as well have fun while we're here.
Absolutely. No, I love that approach. Each week, I take what I'm hearing in conversations with legal leaders. I analyse the market and track emerging trends in this AI era. In my newsletter called The Future Lawyer Market Intel for the AI Era, I'm focused on what AI is exposing, the opportunities, the blind spots, and the shifts shaping the next 5 years. This is how you see the chessboard before everyone else does. And I also really love the way that you are approaching different people within your team and trying to think like them and being subjective about the way that you introduce the AI or help them with AI and adapt it to them as a person in their specific role. Because I guess a lot of teams that I speak to, it's like a firm-wide or a team-wide approach. But from what you've said, it's like, well, actually, it's quite a subjective and intimate thing because, one person might feel more comfortable with ChatGPT, the other might be more comfortable with Gemini. Like it depends on the person, their age group, all sorts of different factors. So I think it really is brilliant that you realize this and that's how you're bringing this culture out, and that it's brilliant, honestly.
Yeah, well, thank you. But there's some things that you can provide like general training on, right? You can say like this is how you log into Gemini and here's how you could create like a draft of something. There is kind of that level of education and training and enablement that happens at a broad level, but I don't think that's where long term we're going to have the biggest impact. Everyone has kind of gotten to that base level at this point, most people I would say, of being able to like, oh yeah, I should go try Gemini first, right? I'm starting a new project plan. Like, let me put something into Gemini and see what it comes up with. Get past that blank page problem. But when we really think about like how we're embedding AI into the way we work, that's not it. That's just kind of that ad hoc, like, yeah, it helps me do my job a little bit better, but it's not truly like transforming the way that we as a legal team deliver services. And that's why I have to spend so much time really focused on these individual use cases and teams and even people, and understanding what their real pain points are. Like what part of the process is the most challenging to them? What tools are they already using? Because I also have a really firm belief that you can't just like tack on AI and say like, oh yeah, actually, if you go over here and log into Gemini and do something, and then you come back to your other application, like people aren't going to use that. So you really have to have it embedded into the work that they're already doing and the places that they're working. So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that and understanding what are those tools that people are already using today and how can we insert AI in a really useful way into where they already are working. Because I think we're going to get the best adoption that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the best way that you can get the best out of your team. Do you find, because what it sounds like is, you're obviously in legal operations, but it sounds like you're becoming more of like an AI advisor or consultant.
I hope not.
Are you finding that your role is actually shifting to be like you need to know about the latest, I don't know, tools to help your individual team members do better?
Yeah, no, I think it's a big part of a legal operations role is always being on kind of like what is that cutting edge of the next technology that's going to help our legal department. operate, most efficiently and deliver the best services we possibly can to our business, which helps, grow revenue, serve our customers better, all those good things. And I think this is just kind of the next wave for me. There was a phase, a decade plus ago that everyone was like e-billing everything, right? And then there's like a CLM wave and everyone had to implement CLM and everyone became a CLM expert. And so now I kind of feel like this is just another wave of, and it's definitely different. It's not a single kind of point application like those are. But this just feels like the next wave of this is what legal operations people have to now be experts in is how can we bring AI into our functions. And so, yes, I guess I spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I hope I'm not the only expert. I rely a lot on our IT team to support this, our vendors to support it. I've got a really great team of folks who are also becoming AI experts. But yes, I think of myself a little bit maybe as like, I hate the word evangelist, but I think of myself a little bit as like the evangelist of AI across the legal department, right? Like bringing it to all these different functions and helping these individuals and teams understand how AI is going to make their lives better.
How do you balance the helping people to become more efficient with AI, helping them with their specific workflows, but also with the risk and kind of compliance side of things and the, I guess, AI governance side of things? How do you balance the two? You gave that example of your colleague with the presentations. How do you know which tools you're able to help them use, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is a challenge, all organizations are facing right now, right? We want to move fast, but we want to do it in a responsible way. And we know there are risks with using AI tools. So we have a robust kind of governance model set up here at DocuSign. And we do weigh the balance between we want people to try things and be able to experiment and see if that tool is going to work for them. So as a legal team, we are trying different tools and running, small kind of pilots and POCs, because I think you do have to actually get your hands on a tool. You can't just see a demo to really understand how it's going to work. And so we as a company are allowing people across the company to do that in a limited fashion. If you want to try and pilot a tool in the legal team or elsewhere in the company, you can do that. You can't put confidential data in. We still run a security process and make sure that we are comfortable with people using the tool at all. But we are allowing people to experiment. So that's kind of the first piece. And then, if we decide to move forward with a tool, we have an even more kind of robust process that we go through from a security perspective, and really understanding, how is data flowing, and what tools is this going to connect to? How are people going to be using it? Who's going to be using it? And so we do that, when we do want to roll out an application more broadly. And that's the responsible thing to do. That's kind of how we're thinking about, like, the governance side of things. Within the legal team, I think we generally have the advantage that people tend to be more thoughtful about, like, what am I putting into this tool? Where is this data going? Like, I think people, legal teams are typically more skeptical. That doesn't mean that no one ever really makes a mistake or put something into an AI tool that they shouldn't. But we've provided a lot of kind of guidance and training around always have a human in the loop. Like, we are not to the point where AI is going to do your job without you. And so as we're building out our new agentic kind of workflows and things, we are intentionally building in a human in the loop. We are, making sure that we have like really clean kind of data sources that are attached to these agents that we're building. So we're not, feeding our new commercial self-service agent, the universe of data out there within DocuSign. We're feeding in a really narrow kind of set of data that we've scrubbed, that we've cleaned, that we know is going to provide kind of the best answer in that agent. And then we have a human reviewing it before it ever goes out into the world. And that human, we're really clear, like, the human is ultimately responsible for the output, right? So you are using AI as a tool, you're hoping that it's getting you kind of, it's helping you provide an answer back to your client faster, but you are ultimately responsible for it. And so you need to review, validate, check your citations. And so I think that's kind of the way we're trying to balance, like, yes, we want to move quickly. Yes, we want to give people access to tools. We want people to try things. We want people to play with them. We've got a lot of tools at our disposal across DocuSign from an AI perspective, but we also, we want to make sure we do have those humans who are validating everything, and still checking things so that we want no AI slop out there, right? I can recognize it in like a second. I know when someone sends me something that they've spent very little time reviewing, and I happily push back and say, like, please take another look at this. This is not ready for me to look at, or another human, right? So it is, but it is really challenging, right? Finding that balance between letting people use it, experiment, play, try things. And that I think we're doing a really good job of. And then being really thoughtful about, like, when we actually implement an AI in use cases, where is that human? Where is the validation step? What data sources are you using? What tools are you using? And all of that combined, I think it's helping us find that balance. But it's also changing so rapidly. So it's, every day is a new day. We're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, it is changing so fast. And just going back to your point about somebody comes to you with something that AI has produced, it really annoys me, when people send me an email or a document and it's clearly just an output from ChatGPT, like they haven't even amended it or anything. And I'm like, and often I will say to people, like, it looks like ChatGPT's come out with this, and they're like, oh yeah, it has. Well, did you not think that I wouldn't notice? It's like, please just, take the time to actually make it look at least a little bit more human.
I saw someone's post on LinkedIn yesterday that was, and the response, one of the comments in the LinkedIn post was like, I can tell that Claude helped you write this, and I can tell that you edited this paragraph and not this paragraph, and you also edited this paragraph. And I just thought that was so interesting that, whether or not it was 100% true, the fact that, we all now understand what are, how does ChatGPT write? How does Gemini write? How does Claude write? And that we have now started to recognize and can identify, like, no, clearly a human did not write this. This is AI written, and we've even gone beyond just the formatting piece. I think a lot of people used to talk about the M dashes or the bolding or the all of that, and now we're to the point where we understand how the writing style of AI in some cases. And I just thought that was so funny. It's like, wow, what world have we come to today?
I know. It's so scary, honestly. It's, yeah.
And we also joke about, like, we'll have written, maybe bullet points, put it into Gemini, have Gemini write out the full kind of narrative document. We send it over to our chief legal officer. He's like, I don't have time to read this 40-page document you now sent me. He puts it back in Gemini to get back to the bullet points that he's going to read. And it just goes in this loop. And I'm like, oh, we should have just sent him the bullet points to start with, like, why did we have Gemini create this 40-page document? So, we're learning. We're all still learning, I think.
Yeah, we are. And like you say, things are moving so fast, new tools are coming out. People completely freaked out when Anthropic came out with this legal assistant or whatever it was. Even the stock prices dropped, which it was just, I was just like, why is everyone freaking out, from the tiny, well, I know it wasn't tiny, but like just the fact that AI is changing and evolving is making the whole world completely lose their minds. And that is fascinating to me. But how do you kind of keep up with the latest trends and you, I guess, use them to your advantage within your teams at DocuSign?
That's something directly impacted DocuSign, right? Anthropic coming out with the legal application, and everyone said, oh, well, SaaS is dead, right? And I think that was an overreaction, and a lot of people have realized, like, no, there's a lot more that goes into a really robust enterprise tool like DocuSign or Salesforce or any other tool like that, compared to what Anthropic rolled out pretty quickly. Not that there isn't value in what they've done, but I really keep coming back to this idea of how is it integrated into the workflow of what we already are doing today. Like, if I'm buying a new tool and I am, rolling out to my legal team, and then, they're toggling between that tool, and then they actually have to go over to this ServiceNow ticket, which is where they intake their request, and then they have to go back to their email, and then they have to jump on Slack, and they're going between all of these different tools, and the AI tool is just yet another tool in their toolkit. I'm not sure that's adding value to them. So I'm being, really, really thoughtful about these AI applications that seem really cool right off the bat. And you're like, wow, it looks like, Claude's new co-work for legal is going to like transform the way we do everything. Great, but where is all the input information coming in that needs to go into that tool? And then where does the output go? Like, how do I get the output that I've generated back in, back to my client? Is there a repository that this knowledge is all getting stored in? Or was it just that kind of ephemeral chat experience? So I'm really thinking about the kind of like broader ecosystem and integration. And that's, the ways that I keep up on how this is all changing and so fast are I spend a lot of time talking to my peers in the legal ops community. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I wish I didn't. I hate social media, but I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn reading. I spend a lot of time talking to our product legal team because they also tend to be like really on the cutting edge of understanding like what's next for technology. And so they keep me up to date. One of them has recently gotten me hooked on a Substack writer, or I don't even know what you call it, a Substack content producer. And so I am delving into that world as a way to just really keep up to date on this technology that is changing so rapidly. I enjoy attending conferences. I think that's a great way to meet a lot of people and like continue to build that community. But I'd say mostly I rely on peers. The second I'm thinking about like, hey, I want to try out, I want to pilot a new AI technology for the legal team, the first thing I do is I go out and look at like who else has tried it. And I ask them and I get their kind of opinion. And that to me has really been the most valuable.
I also use LinkedIn to help me, but I'm starting to get very, very overwhelmed because every day I look at it and I'm like, this news, this news, this news, this new tool, this has happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's too many things to look at right now. I can't focus. And then I'm like getting distracted and it's taking me to different directions. And then I'm finding out more, I'm going down rabbit holes and it's just too much, it's just too much. But it's a great place. I think everyone's sharing their knowledge about the latest AI tools, but also I'm finding more and more kind of like legal ops people, but also just lawyers generally, maybe mainly GCs, to be honest, are actually explaining their thought processes as to which tools they're choosing to use. And they're actually explaining in posts like, oh, I had this problem and I'm now trying this tool, this tool, this tool. This one was better because of X, Y, Z. And I think those types of posts are really, really interesting. And, we didn't see those like 6 months ago.
No, I think that's really cool. And what that also signals to me is that it's not even, I think legal ops was always the kind of at the forefront of let's adopt this new technology and let's try something new and change and all of that. And what is really cool to me is that, like you said, general counsels are now getting really interested in this. And not even just general counsels, but, all kinds of other lawyers and legal professionals across the legal department are also becoming the kind of eyes and ears of like, I heard about this really cool new thing. We should try it. My peer at this other company told me about this thing. I want to learn how to build an agent myself, right? We have this idea of like legal as the builder, which I think is really exciting. And I think we went from like IT was always the builder and implementer of technology, and then legal ops was, and like I love when I can build out my own workflows and create my own custom extractions and whatever. And now we're getting to the point where it's not even just legal ops. Like I have folks on my broader legal team who are like building their own agents, right? And I think that is so cool. And I've got our GC like building out his own notebook LM notebooks and figuring out like I can make my own job description for a new headcount all by myself. And I'm like, that's amazing, And so it's really cool to see this evolution. It's changed with AI, right? That really wasn't something that was as prevalent before this whole kind of AI revolution.
It really is incredible, and it's exciting to see as well. I'm excited to see the legal industry modernize a little bit more and actually be more innovative. And like you say, people are wanting to be creative. We're seeing lawyers want to be creative, and this is a new thing for me. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. Some of them, I say, like, I hope most of them, not all of them, right? And those are the ones that will fall behind, the ones who aren't kind of like thinking, how can I do things differently? I think we're in an era where people are like fundamentally consuming information in a different way. The expectations have changed for how fast you get responses, because you can go to ChatGPT and like instantly get a response to anything that you ever wanted to know, even in a better way than you could with Google. And so people are just, the expectations have really changed. And so I'm excited. And I think most of the folks that I work with on the legal team are getting there, right? They are starting to think this way and starting to think about like, how could I do things differently? But it's a big shift, right? Kind of back to that like cultural transformation kind of question. But at one point lawyers thought they weren't going to be sending documents via email. And could you imagine today if you were like, oh, I'm just not going to send that to you via email, that's not secure, I think I'll just FedEx it to you? Like, no, we're never going to do that. Or back 15 years ago, I was a DocuSign customer, but I was trying to get my general counsel to buy DocuSign, and she's like, I don't know about e-signatures. And I was like, oh, this is the way of the future. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And we finally bought DocuSign, and I estimated we saved $1 million in the first year. And that's just like comical to me now. And I think we will look back at this era in a similar way. We'll be like, why did we ever question the use of AI? But we're just not quite there yet, right? We're still in that kind of discovery and unsure phase and learning. But I hope we get to that point where we look back and we're like, oh, of course, like this is just how we do things.
I know, but I do feel like with AI, it's just so much bigger than even, emails or anything technical. Moving from paper files to computer, I think it's bigger than that, because it's actually able to replace tasks and certain roles, which is just incredible. So yeah, I think it's huge, and I think also companies are able to use AI as like a strategic advantage or a competitive advantage. I guess within DocuSign, it's a different story for you guys, because you know you have always been that tech focused, probably AI focused for a while. It's not a new thing for you guys. And I just wonder what your view is on, do you think AI will help companies, law firms and in-house teams within companies like yours, help them become more competitive? Or do you think it will just be like a baseline, making everyone kind of on the same type of level? What's your view on that?
The companies that do adopt AI and figure out how to incorporate it into the way they work, those will be the companies that are successful. Like I do believe that. I think the bar is just going to be raised for all companies. So the ones that don't adopt AI, haven't figured out how to kind of move into this new era, those ones will fall behind. And then for everyone else, the bar is just higher. And I think there certainly is an opportunity to have AI be your competitive advantage. I don't think it happened overnight in the way that a lot of like CFOs would have liked it to, right? They were like, oh, we invested in all these tools, like you're instantly going to be saving, you're going to eliminate headcount and you're going to save, all these dollars on, for us, like outside counsel spend or, whatever it was. And it didn't happen in 1 year. I think the time frame in which it's going to have an impact is slightly longer at the enterprise level anyway. I think for smaller companies, they might be more nimble. They might be able to change the way they do things a little bit more quickly, especially companies that are growing really rapidly. They might be able to, kind of immediately offset some headcount, for example. For us, we are big enough that it just takes a little bit longer for us to really like thoughtfully embed AI into the way that we do things. I don't think the examples of like creating a AI generated image or drafting something, like those add up, right? Those are like minutes that add up, but that's not truly like transforming the way that we operate. The parts that will transform the way we operate involve that like really embedding AI into our workflows, and that just takes time. That takes a little bit of time, and we're being really thoughtful about it. I'm being really thoughtful because if I roll something out really, broadly to our legal team and it epically fails, I've invested a lot of time in doing that. They've had a horrible experience and then they never want to go back. And so I'm being really thoughtful about like, let's find these really good use cases where there's a clear kind of way that AI is going to help us. Think about it a lot, spend a lot of time like figuring out kind of the best way to do it, and then roll out something that really does have a real impact. And so doing it in that way just takes a little bit of time. So like, I do think this will be a competitive advantage for companies like us and many others. It just didn't happen in 1 year is kind of the way I think about it.
No, I can see that. How do you go about actually finding those things that will take the time to learn about, I'm not wording this right, but how do you identify those points where you think, okay, AI can really help us in this section. Okay, let me do some research. Let me go into it in a bit more detail and then bring it to our teams. How do you initially find those parts that you can develop and really make more efficient, and AI can help with that?
So there's two ways I think about it. One is kind of the classic, where do we have kind of the highest volume of work? Like, what is the work that is really high volume, probably lower risk too? And that's always something that as a legal ops person, even well before AI, that's something that I always think about, like, how can we do this differently? There's a place where we've got a lot of it and it's not all that important or pretty low risk. We got to figure out a way to do that better. So that's one angle that I'm looking at it when I'm thinking about kind of what are our primary or starter use cases. The second way is, what is AI good at? There are certain things that AI is just better at than other things. Something it's really good at is like sifting through large volumes of data and producing like a nice, concise answer to a question. So we've built out like a customer questionnaire agent. So, we as a vendor get lots and lots of questionnaires from our customers, whether it's for an RFP or it's we've already bought DocuSign, but we have, our annual sustainability questions we want to send you. Those questions, they're fairly standard. They're slightly different, but they're fairly standard kind of questions that get asked. And we have just like a boatload of, we had like, I think it was like thousands of pages or something ridiculous of documentation on answers to these types of questions. That's like the perfect thing for AI to do. It's high volume. The questions are like slightly different, but pretty much the same. Like AI can figure out what you're asking. And then we have all the answers documented. So it's a fairly straightforward use case, but it's an example of like, we found something that high volume, really annoying for a lawyer to have to go find the answer to like, where is our, what's our UK registered address? Like, we don't need a human to go find that information. And then, what is AI good at? It's really good at answering those types of questions. So that's just an example of like, when I'm thinking about what the use cases are that we want to roll out, I'm looking for those high volume, lower risk. We still have a human in the loop reviewing stuff. And then AI is, what is AI good at? Good at a project like that.
Yeah, that's such a great example, actually. It must be satisfying as a legal ops person to go through different stages of the business and of the processes and say, you know what, why are we even doing this? AI can massively help with it. But then I guess the hardest part and the part that takes the most time is like, how do we actually get an AI to help us do this in line with our compliance and governance policies,
Yeah, and it's, for us, it's a lot of it has to do with, who owns that data, right? So this like, all of the answers to all of these questions, we have to think about like, who owns that data? Are we okay with feeding all of that data into an AI tool? In this case, we have an enterprise tool that, is contained to the DocuSign ecosystem. So it's got that kind of like walled off feel. So we're comfortable giving this information. We're comfortable that we've got a human in the loop that's validating it. We're confident in the responses that are going out back to the customer. But yeah, there's a lot of those kind of like thinking through a mental kind of checklist of, are we okay ingesting this data? Are we okay with like, the potential that an answer to something that comes out could be wrong? Do we have a human that is in the loop? That's, yeah, there's all these kinds of considerations that go into every single one of these use cases that we're thinking about, right? And that's, that's why today I still do have humans in pretty much everything that we've done so far. I hope to take the human out at some point, but as I am, kind of building confidence in what we do today, I still have a human involved in kind of everything.
It's really important to have a human involved just to obviously oversee everything, but it's also very optimistic to know that, you guys still have humans overlooking things, and humans are still needed, in teams, because so many lawyers are freaking out like, oh, I'm going to lose my job or whatever. So it's, yeah, I think it's absolutely vital for us to have humans there, especially ones who know about AI and the risks and the opportunities and, everything.
We're thinking a lot about like what are the things that are still uniquely human. And so one of our kind of professional development programs that we're going to roll out to the legal team this year, that was the brainchild of one of my wonderful colleagues, is a program that is all about developing kind of those unique human skills, things like judgment that so far like we don't really trust AI to make the final call on a lot of things. So focusing on some of those what could be perceived as maybe softer skills or just like uniquely human skills is something that we are going to do this year as a training program for the legal team to really show like in addition to you needing to build your competency and fluency and how to use AI and make the most of AI and understand the risks and all of that, it's also worth developing the skills that the human is still going to be doing, right? Like presenting, like, yes, you can have AI do a presentation, and I know they're getting really good at that, but there is something still, very human about being in a room with a group of people communicating effectively, that I don't think we fully trust AI to do yet. So, like, let's focus on building those skills that are still really valuable to have a human do. That's kind of one of the ways we're thinking about it, is just focusing on what the human is good at, but while we're also thinking about what can I offload off the human. And we did a really fun exercise where we created like digital assistants. So I had everyone on my team do like think about all the tasks they didn't want to do anymore, and then write a job description for like an AI digital assistant that would do all those tasks for you. And then we came up with like little candidates. So, I think my candidate's name ended up being Lottie, and it stood for something legal operations, something or other. That digital assistant was going to like take over all these tasks for me, right? And then I was going to not do them anymore. But that doesn't mean that I'm not doing my job. There's lots of other things that I don't trust AI to do yet. Maybe someday we will, but definitely not yet. And so yeah, really thinking about those unique human things, how much more time I'm going to have to do those when AI is doing kind of all the annoying things like going through survey data and creating, kind of what are the key takeaways from boatloads of survey data that I got, right? That's like happy to offload that, didn't want to do that anyway. Great, now I can go work on something else really cool.
Wow, that's so great. I love the idea of building like a job description for your, assistant. I think it's fantastic. It's so cool.
It's a way to think about like how are you going to grow your team without adding humans, but also really thinking about like making AI really embedded as like part of your workforce. It sounds kind of crazy, but like if AI is doing tasks for you that you could have a human do, like they're basically an extension of your team, right? And so really thinking about like what is it that my Lottie could do overnight while I'm sleeping, like go through my inbox, figure out like what emails I need to respond to today, like just make me a list of those, figure out like what meetings I have the next day. Like there's things like that would just help me show up more prepared for the next day or better prioritize the work that I do. So it's just kind of fun to think about. Like I'm not getting a real personal assistant anytime soon, but I can have a digital personal assistant.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And it's also a way that you can prepare for the next day, like you say, but without you having to have that mental strain to actually think about, right, what do I actually need to do the next day? It's, well, like you say, it's just like having an assistant, but that's just so cool. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's really fun. And it's really helpful to think about too, like what are the things that, you don't need to be doing anymore that you could figure out a way for AI to do. And it's not, it could be a whole variety of things. And you might end up building like a dozen different little AI agents to do all of those different tasks. It's not like one robot that sits next to me or something like that. But just thinking it in that way of like, these are tasks that a human is doing today that I think a human doesn't need to do tomorrow, and how can I kind of delegate those tasks. This is my colleague Hema talks about this, like how can you delegate the task to AI. And my other favorite thing that she talks about is AI. It's not a set it and forget it. It's not a one and done. You don't like create an agent or build out a Gemini gem or whatever and just expect it to function perfectly. Just like you don't expect a human on your team to like get it the first time or not need any kind of coaching and additional kind of training. That kind of analogy really helps me understand that you have to continually train the AI. You have to give it feedback. You provide a prompt, it doesn't give you what you want. Like give it the feedback. Like I didn't want you to write it in bullet points. I want it to be in a paragraph. I don't like your tone, right? These are like this is guidance you might give a human too. And so when you think about AI in that way, it's just kind of a really interesting reminder that this is like an ongoing kind of training that is required to really get the most out of all of the tools that we have available to us.
Yeah, you're right. You've got to it's continuous training, and I think this is where people go wrong. They think you tell the AI once, or you give it a prompt and it should know what you're talking about and it should do it perfectly well. And it's like, well, if you compare that with a human wouldn't be able to do that. So why are you expecting?
Right, like, do they have all the context that you have? Probably not, right? If you haven't, this happens to me with my team all the time where I realize, okay, they weren't in that meeting. Like, I have all the context in my brain, but unless I share that with a person on my team, they're not going to effectively be able to do the task that I'm trying to give them, right? And AI is the same way. It has no idea what happened in that last meeting that you were in the last year, that doesn't remember how you did that task last year. And so you have to really think about like giving it all the context, just like you'd have to give a human all the context before they can effectively do the task that you're asking them to do. This is like really like we're really thinking like no one ever logged into an e-billing tool and was like, oh, I need to make sure that I like, give it feedback and give it some context and, maybe iterated on it, right? I talk about this all the time with CLM tools, right? You can't just like build something and leave it and expect it to function perfectly for the rest of the lifespan of that tool. But it's even more so in AI, where it really requires like a lot of kind of TLC. You are constantly iterating and making it better and
Mhm.
improving. So it's a huge mindset shift.
What advice would you give to legal heads about leading AI and automation just beyond, picking the right tools or the right AI to use? What would you say is the bigger picture for legal heads right now?
I'd say, really be thoughtful about the places that you think you can use AI most effectively in your department. I think, similar to the what I was talking about with CFOs and thinking that like we were going to buy a new tool and it just kind of immediately transform the way we do things. We're going to immediately save all this money. Really being thoughtful about what are the places where AI can make the biggest impact in your team, but also just not being afraid to try something. I am a big fan of, and I tell my team this all the time, like, let's get something to like 80% there. Let's try it and see how it goes. Right. And I think, we can get kind of in that phase of, and this happened, I think, to a lot of folks and us included of like analysis paralysis of like, I don't know what to do. There's too many options. I don't know where to start. And when it comes to that, it's like, just try something, just start, just think of a small use case, but try it and get your teams using it, because that will kind of snowball. And once they see the value, like that will build on itself. So I guess, yeah, that's what I would say is like be really thoughtful about where you are using AI. Don't expect it to transform your team and the way that they operate kind of immediately, but also don't wait so long that you kind of miss the boat. Like really get people engaged. And one of my favorite things that we've done here at our team, and what I think, I recommend to lots of others, is in our monthly town hall, We have a segment where we have 3 members from our legal team share a really cool way they're using AI. And at first I just kind of thought like, oh, this will be fun. Like we'll learn about, ways people are doing things. It has become like a highlight of that meeting. Everyone is just kind of blown away by the different use cases that their teammates have come up with. And then they want to go replicate it. They're like, oh, that was so cool. Like I want to go build that thing that you built. And that's just been a really fun way to kind of have it be a really organic kind of from the bottoms up, right? Instead of just, our CLO being like, you have to use AI. It's really, really from the bottoms up. I found this really cool way to solve this problem that I have. Like, let me tell everyone about it. And then that's kind of replicated across the department. So that's been really fun and just like a way to get a lot of buy-in and learn from one another and give folks a chance to like be in the spotlight and not have it feel so much like a mandate. So I guess that would be my recommendation as folks are thinking about like how they're adopting AI is let your team members try something, be in the spotlight, shine, and share what they're doing.
No, that's super interesting. I've heard that from a few other people actually as well. I love the idea that, your weekly, no, how often? Monthly?
Yeah, we do it monthly, but yeah.
That is like the highlight of the call. I think that's brilliant. How does that work from a psychological perspective in terms of like, rather than you providing, I guess, formal training, like, okay, use it like this, why are people more engaged if it's more of a peer-to-peer training?
Well, I think because I talk to them so much, they're sick of hearing me tell them like, "Oh, I got this cool new thing. You have to try it." I think there is this perception sometimes that legal ops can be that always wanting to change processes and always wanting to do things better, and it is true. But I think people get that kind of fatigue from okay, well, you made me do it this way last year, and now I have to do it differently this year. I'm annoyed. And so part of it is that. Part of it is also people are so passionate about it, something that they've built themselves and figured out how to solve themselves, and that passion is contagious. Like I'm clearly very passionate about this, but that only goes so far. It is so much cooler when our government affairs manager shows up and says like, I built this really cool podcast as a way to synthesize like all of what happened in the government this week, and I can share it with the sales teams and they think it's awesome because they get this bite-sized thing they can listen to in the car on the way to pick up their kids. And he comes in and he tells us that, and then the next week someone's like, oh, I have a way I could also build an AI generated podcast for a similar kind of thing. And so just having that passion and kind of more real world applications, I think, than just me showing up and being like, hey, here's how to build a podcast. They can't see it in real life as well as when they see their peers. And just having that kind of like ownership, I think, is what I'm finding to be so fun. Like people are really just so excited about whatever they built, whatever problem they've solved. That goes a long way. That is much more interesting than going to a 1-hour training on like how to build an AI agent.
For sure. And then I guess when somebody shows a tool that they've used, it kind of motivates everybody else to be like, I want to find something that solves a problem for my team. And it becomes more like don't know what the word is, but like you say, it's part of the culture, but it's like helping that mutual, helping everybody else do better type thing,
Exactly. And I think, just like I was saying, I love to learn from my peers. And I think, that is really similar across our legal team. Like people love to learn from one another and have it really feel like it's not something they have to do, it's something they want to do. They want to try that thing that they saw their coworker share because it looked so cool and it seemed to be really helpful, and they want that kind of experience of doing that for themselves rather than feeling like they have to do it, which is no fun. No one wants to feel like they have to do something.
Yeah, literally no one.